tree.
Watch out.
Ah!
Hi, welcome to another episode of the Forbidden Limb Podcast. I'm your host, Richard Noon. I'm joined, as always, with Jeremy Commander and Brian Heath. Today we're going to be talking about how to write rules. One of the things that Jeremy's told us before that he does right away to make sure that his game makes sense and is coherent. So actually, let's start with Jeremy. What would be some of the things that you would look for to make sure that your rules make sense for the first gameplay?
I feel like that for the rules, I work on my games with a design partner, and so one of us will write the first draft of the rules and kind of pitch that out, and then often my design partner will write the first draft, but he writes it almost like a computer program. It's very terse, and it's very blah, 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 blah. And so then I try to write it out so like a normal human would read it, and I try to write it in first person. You take this, and then you do that. And I want it to be clear and concise. I want to put some flavor in it to give you a sense of what the game is about, like that opening paragraph. And I want to be able to refer back to the rules later when I'm testing it. Maybe I've made a bunch of changes and I can't remember. Wait, what's the tie break now? Or how many of these do I put out to set up the game? And so the rules becomes my guide. And I make sure I keep the rules updated and current, so I can look at, okay, no, we put 5 of these out to start the game now, and the tie break is this. And I find that to be helpful for me.
That's actually hilarious because that's exactly what I do with Clayton, my design partner.
Yeah.
Where I do a lot of the initial playtesting and everything too. I probably do most of the playtesting. So I'll write my rules, and as a software engineer, I write code. So I just write line by line. Here's how it works. This is what you do. And then he adds some of that flavor, and he actually makes it readable, to a human, not a computer.
Yes, I can relate exactly.
Yeah,
we really want those good rules.
Yeah, and we also run into that same issue too of keeping on the current rule set, where we'll have a conversation that'll last 2 hours on the phone,
right?
And we'll go over some changes to the rules. But we need to make sure we have a central location. We use Google Docs where we update the rules with everything we talked about and the decisions that we made, where we're actually going to make changes, so we're both playing the same game.
Do we make that change? Does that cost 3 or 4 now? And
right.
You really need to have that written out. Yeah. I feel like it's, again, I'm talking about in the past about respecting people's time. If I haven't taken the time to write out my rules, I'm not being respectful of your time. My game's not ready yet. If I, the designer, cannot write out a coherent set of rules for my game, then my game is not ready to test.
You should not have to have another person not playing the game standing there so you can constantly ask them questions.
Yes.
How is this?
Right.
Correct. And it's very helpful, like when we do our Pro Tech nights, and I may be running multiple games at once, someone could look at the rules and answer a question without me even be there. In fact, our last Pro Tech night, you guys played Secret Society. You got out the rules. You hadn't played in a while, and I made some rules changes. You read the rules and played the game, and I didn't do anything. I didn't even answer a single question for you, and you were able to play the whole game.
And that's one thing I've noticed too about the prototype nights that I go to. You often have multiple games out there that some people know, some people don't. But you have everything so organized. You have your sell sheet. You have in a nice box each game, so everybody knows like, oh, I can take Secret Societies out. They know they can open it up. It's all going to be there complete. There's going to be a nice set of rules that is complete, and they can just go play it. And people do that. You're going to be demoing one game, but there's like 2 other games that you've designed that are going on at the same time. And then all you got to do at the end is you break out your phone and you set that in front of them, after each game, and then say, here's the feedback. You don't care what actually happened in the game other than what people took from it. What did they like?
Depends on the game. If I'm trying to balance them, then I will track all the scores. So like Secret Society, at this point, I consider it largely done. What I'm looking to do is track things over time. So I do want to know what the scores were. I wrote those down and who won. Because I want to know if the alternate win conditions go off. So it depends what I'm doing with the game. Some I want feedback about impressions, what you think, and some, if it's a late stage, maybe I'm only tracking it for balance. Are the different colors or factions balanced? And I may have to run 30 games, put it in a spreadsheet, and look. And another thing I'm trying to do more often now is when I write those rules early and I write them often, to put the components in there. To put the component list in my rules right away.
Okay.
And the reason for this is I find that matters as I'm tracking the game over time. When I'm pitching games later, if I let the game spiral into too many components, it's less desirable for a publisher, and I may not be aware, like, oh man, we're up to 84 cards already in this. Or I may not be aware that I don't have enough cards for 6-player. I haven't done the 6-player version yet, and I look at my component list, oh, wait a minute, I don't even have enough cards for 6 players yet. We wanted to make this go to 6 players, we haven't tested that yet. So putting that component list in the rules right away, I think is going to help me over time.
Okay.
Brian, when you evaluate a game, what do you look for in the rules when you're considering, I'm going to see if I'm going to even play this game or if I'm interested in this game? What do you look for in rules when someone is pitching you a game?
Good question.
Usually when they're pitching it, I'm not looking at the rules. But if it's a digital pitch where somebody's emailing me and sending me the rules, when I look for it, I mean, a lot of my decisions are actually based not on the contents of the rules, but on the type of game it is. But one thing that is important is that you can lose me with the rules. So if I'm, I don't have a whole lot of time to consider every, game that's sent to me. So if I'm reading through the rules and I just don't get it, or like there's one line that contradicts another line, and I'm like, I don't really have time to figure out which is the right rule. Mm-hmm. Or if I'm playing a game, to consider, like somebody sent me a prototype, if I can't get through your rules and understand how to play, I'm not going to spend the time to do it. So just make sure they're complete, they make sense. I don't care if there's grammatical errors. I mean, it adds a touch of professionalism. Yeah. I mean, but if it's just a prototype, I'm okay with that.
I've seen finished games with grammatical rules, and they bother me like crazy.
Yeah. You don't need.
You think less of that game immediately, right?
I do.
You were like, this game may not have been tested, it may not be done.
Right. You don't need diagrams in it, but if it's something that's going to keep me from understanding how to set up this game, then you do. They don't have to be beautiful works of art, but they need to have arrows that point to this, and so I can tell what I'm supposed to do with this.
The picture's worth 1,000 words.
The biggest thing is just don't lose me and don't make me work too hard to understand how to play that game.
Fair enough.
What do you think is one of the most confusing things that you've seen in rules? Like, what do people put in the rules or leave out of the rules that confuses players right off the bat?
When I read some rules, I want a little bit of flavor of what the game is about, what's the world I'm in, what am I doing.
The first paragraph should be nothing about the rules of the game. It should just get you into the idea of, okay, you are a caveman and you're and you're grabbing berries and killing things.
Exactly. What's my motivation?
Yeah.
What's this game about? And then I want to know right away, how do I win? Because all my other decisions in the game are going to lead up to that. How do I win? So I really don't
Strangely enough, begin at the end.
Yeah. To win, the player who has the most berries gathered at the end of the game will be the winner. I want to know that right away. I don't want to read that on the last page after I've read 20 rules, because now everything becomes in context. I now understand, this is why I would make a basket, so I can hold more berries to try and win.
But keep it simple, because I've seen some where they're going to do a whole page of how you win, like
tie breaks and all that.
Most building points plus the technology points, and you multiply that by this other thing, and then you go through a long page like, I don't even know what all this stuff is.
Yeah.
So just keep it to like 1 or 2 sentences.
And then I like to have a section later in the rule, into the game, and that breaks it all out in details, the tie breaks and all that kind of stuff.
And I think each designer is different, and each rules reader is different, because
in fact, there's some ways that there's worded and like everybody will read it like a certain way, and I read it a different way. I'm like, I'm confused by that, and then so I think getting it under the eyes of several people is a good idea.
I think you should have someone read the rules and give you feedback that is not afraid to tell you that you are a terrible writer, that will give you honest feedback, who has played the game.
Okay.
So someone has played the game, they read the rules and give you feedback. So then you do all the cleanup.
Was this the game you just played?
Correct.
Okay.
And did this make sense? Like, I totally didn't understand that, or this doesn't make sense. The way you explain it was like this, and so I do that. And then I would say, get yourself a second editor for your rules that has never played your game. Someone who is the true.
Could they figure it out?
Could they figure it out? After reading these rules, did you think you could now play this game? And get that feedback. So I think you want at least 2 passes of edits.
You also need someone who has a very, very strong understanding of the English language, where to use commas, how to spell everything. Somebody who really understands that is someone who may not even play board games at all. But if you can find a really good English writing editor, that is super valuable too. I've seen way, way too many rule books with commas in the wrong places, and spelling errors, using the wrong form of to.
There's those jokes out there. Oxford commas save lives. You know?
That's Oxford commas are my favorite things in the world.
There are 3 resources I can give you for that. One is there are a lot of people who were English majors that you know that are in your gaming group or your friends, those starving writers and or school teachers, and are used to grading papers all the time.
Just people that are rule lawyers, you know, they like pulling apart those things and making sure everything is very specific about what it says.
Yeah. And some people that are passionate about writing are more motivated to help you. They really want writing to be good, and they need to be motivated to help you. So using that teacher or English major would be one resource. A second resource, the Game Crafter. If you are going to put your game up the Game Crafter to sell it, or maybe you're going to order review copies, or you're going to order like giveaway promo copies, or something like that, you can pay for what's called a Sanity Test. And you pay $25, and their team of 3 professional editors review your rules and give you a score from 1 to 100 based on an objective criteria of what they look for in those rules.
Okay.
And so that may be a resource for you.
I think that's an area where there is an opportunity for somebody to do that. If you want to specialize in reviewing rules, it could be a way to break into the industry if you want to do it for free. But then also, it could be a way to possibly, start a business around that. Because if I'm going to publish a game, I would like to have, I may be able to find people around me who can do this for free. But, if there's somebody who has done this a million times, I know they're really good at it, and they have a track record that proves that they are, I'll give them some money to possibly, review it and maybe do a
$25
thing.
for a sanity test. $25 is a good deal to me. These guys have done, tons and tons of games in the Game Crafter.
Part of it is part of this their scoring is on the layout on the Game Crafter, like the storefront.
The page.
Yeah.
That's only about 10 points though.
Yeah, it's a smaller part of it.
And I should do that anyways for practice, for my sales sheet or other things.
Yeah.
Many publishers evaluate whether they're going to play for a game or whether they want to play a game or ask for a demo copy based on their read through of the rules. And there are guys who go on Board Game Geek and other places that just download the rules and read the rules to see what games they might be interested in buying. So for many people, those rules are your first impression you're making on them, whether they're interested in continuing with your game or not. And so it's very important that you have good rules.
I've seen so many games with the little cards that have like a summary of the rules on there.
The player cheat sheet thing.
Yeah.
I almost always do that. When I don't do that, people ask me for it. I really like that. I understand you can't always do it because of component costs. Sometimes adding player reference cards, you push your component count over and you can't do that. But I really like doing that in most games, kind of a summary. This is what you do on your turn that fits on a little regular card that players can have. And Booze Barons, we put that on the player character cards. So your character card tells you what character you are, what color you are, and the basic flow of the game right in front of you.
Would you subject that to the same level of criticism that you would the regular rules?
No. So that could be an express or bulleted version of the rules, just kind of to remind you A, B, C. It doesn't have to go into all the details, or you can do
that's
A,
not
but
what
not
I
B.
mean, would you subject that to making sure that it is as understandable, or not something you tack on at the end?
Correct. No. I usually do the player cards right away, within the first or second rev. And I think that's they're just as important in your rules, that they be written well, they use the right commas, things like that.
Certainly they're not all encapsulating. Okay.
And so one thing we do with New Salem, the back of the rule book has just the 3 areas that you may want to reference throughout the game. So you don't have to flip through anything. Just have the rules sitting on the table somewhere or on a chair nearby, so that if you need to, you can just pull out we have, we need to add 3 witches and 6 Puritans into the deck for this number of players. So it's just.
I really like that. The back page of your rules is really important. You should put there what people to look at the most. If you have a complicated setup, your setup should be there. If you have things like this, are using a 3-player game, 4-player game, 5-player game, the scale, that should be there. Or maybe it's the turn order or the round order. If I have a 7-phase round, I could put the 7 phases on the back of the rulebook.
Right. Many
TCGs have done this for years and been very successful. On the back of the rulebook is the turn order, or the turn sequence for that game. So I read the rules and I flip the rulebook over, and I'm ready to play my first game by looking at that back of that rulebook.
Do you like the booklet pack rules, or would you prefer a folded? Or maybe obviously,
good question.
I think we all appreciate a 1-page rule.
I do too.
If you can.
Yeah.
Sometimes the game is more complicated than that, and it's fun to play more complicated games. But would you prefer it more like something you fold up and you can have different parts facing out so you can have access to different parts, or would you prefer a booklet?
I prefer like pretty minimalist rules. So if you have a simple game and it fits on one double-sided page, I'm happy with that. If you have a more complex game, then what I'd like to see would be two things of rules: a quick start guide, which is like, hey, here's just the stuff you need to get going and start playing. That's like a one-page thing. And then the full rule book, look, now we're going to explain what all these cards do, and this is what the expansion that comes in the box does, all this other stuff. When you're writing your rules, please do not explain all the different scenarios and edge cases and things that's going to happen, because then I'm never going to make it through those rules.
Right.
I suggest putting those in a back, like an appendix, or like a glossary of here's what to do in these different things.
We've talked about pictures before, but would you make sure that things are always in a paragraph? Sort of. You talk about the nice speech to people. Would you make sure that everything's like in the nice language of, prose or?
I think I prefer first person. On your turn, you take this, and then you do that, rather than the player who is active right now may on their turn, that player chooses.
Right.
You write it as if I'm speaking to you conversationally. That conversational, I think, feels a lot better when you read that. You do not need to write everything out in paragraph form. Use bulleted lists. Use A, B, C, D, rather than write it out like a word problem. And this is where the programmer style might be better, using that bulleted list or ABC as a way of doing things. If you need to do an example, maybe break it out in a different font or a different colored box, and so you can clearly see that's an example. If I understand the rule, I don't have to read the example, and I can move on. Or if I'm not quite getting it, I can read the example that's in italic text or in the box or in a different font, so I know that's an example.
It might be worthwhile to have sort of a more of a analytical mind look over, as well as someone who's into the grammar and that type of thing. But
Sure.
It might be interesting to have some a more analytical mind of going, I'd reverse the order of these rules just so establish this before you get to that type of thing.
For Pass the Pain, I had a great editor who had very good experience with that, and she had me reorder some things for that very reason, and it turned out to be a big boon for the game.
So you get a game, and Clayton and I went back and forth about this. You get an expansion to a game. Would you expect to have the expansion have the full rules?
If the expansion only could work on its own, yes. If the expansion required the original game, maybe a small summary, but no, I would not expect that, because you should already have the rules from the original game. So, I don't think I would expect that.
Yeah, we looked into this and kind of got both sides, both answers. So we were never really sure. We don't. We have a very simple front and back, one little small page of the rules that have changed with the expansion.
Now, it certainly would be interesting to have if you had the full set of rules. Now you can throw out your old rule book, and you only, because I can understand also the idea of okay, here's my rule book, and here's all the little addendums for the expansions, and that would be getting annoying. So maybe if you have a couple, I'd go, okay, here's rule book 2.0, and you can throw out everything else.
It depends on how much you change. If the expansion changes a lot, let's say Machikoro, their expansion redoes the whole game. Maybe I reissue the rulebook in that expansion. If it's you're going to add a new deck of cards, it does that. I don't want to read everything again.
Right.
The less rules I read, the happier I am. Give me just a little sheet with just what's new.
Okay, so let me ask you then, how do I know my rules are done? How do I know that they're at least to a finished stage that I can polish up?
That's when you reach the point where you want to do remote blind playtesting. I'm going to take a copy of my game, and I'm going to give it to somebody who then reads the rules, plays the game with their buddies, and I'm not in the room. I'm not there to answer questions, to explain things. Were they able to read the rules, play the game, and play it correctly, and then I know my rules are done. So
how do you make sure they played it correctly if you're not in the room?
Yeah, so then I may ask for the scores, or then do audio feedback afterwards. So I try to use other game designers or gamer buddies for this. I recently sent one of my games to the Dallas Game Designer Group. We did a little prototype exchange. They sent one of theirs, I sent one of theirs. We read the rules. And so my rules were not nearly as good as they should have been. They gave me a D+ on the rules, but a B+ on the game. So this is a really good game. I like this game, but we had to read the rules twice. And when the first time we played, we realized we did something wrong. And when we read the rules again and played the second time, then we caught that. And so I really needed to rewrite and clean up those rules.
It is annoying when you play a new game and you're like, oh, do we just put everything back and start over? Or,
We totally forgot to do this phase.
Ruin it?
Do that. Yeah, that's a bad experience. So doing that remote blind playtest is a good acid test for your rules. Can someone read it? and play it, and then I may ask them some questions, follow-up questions. Did this happen? Did you guys do this? Did you remember to do this? And I can use that to kind of probe and figure out, did they play correctly or did my rules fail?
We've done a playtest before where we've recorded the entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recommend that, or
Yeah, I love it. If someone will blind play test my game and send me the video, they'll record it. I won't ask that of anyone because it's enough for them to actually do it and play it and everything. For them to actually record it, copy it, maybe do a little minor editing, throw it up on YouTube or whatever. That's not. I hate asking for that, but there are certain people who I know are very comfortable doing that. And if they will do that, I love it because I get to see what you are confused about. I get to see you reaching for the rules, trying to find it, spending a minute and a half trying to find this one rule, and like that is the most valuable thing for me to see. I absolutely love it. So if someone will do that, I try to do that for people if I can.
And you also get to see the parts where people actually make the mistakes, and maybe they don't even catch it themselves.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't get in the after game.
You see the emotional reactions, you feel, you hear people's tone of voice, you see their body language.
Yep.
Now technology can help you with that. You can arrange to maybe do a live video playthrough via Meerkat, which is a way of live streaming video for Twitter from your smartphone. It's super dead simple setup. Or Periscope, that's the one that's Twitter's official one.
You could do Skype, or you could do Google Hangout too. That kind of thing would work as well.
I find that the reason I might check out Meerkat or Periscope is the setup is much simple. It's dead simple compared to putting something on YouTube or Skype.
Well, thank you guys very much. I hope that helped people out on trying to figure out how to write coherent rules and rules that make sense for their game and make their game a better game. I've been your host, Richard New. I'm here as always with Jeremy Commander and Brian Hink. You've been watching the Forbidden Limb podcast. If you would like to give us any topics that you'd like us to discuss or comment at all, you can go to our guild at theboardgamegeek.com and talk to us there and give us all sorts of information. Until next time, I'll see you guys across the table someday.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.